Today we're on the floor because it's the only way I can realistically record this monumental book. This is a book of posters printed at Whittington from the Whittington press, published in 1996. The book measures 63 centimetres tall. To give you a sense of just how big that is, here is a perfectly ordinary paperback book for comparison. It was issued in a limitation of 125 copies, and this is one of the special B editions, of which there were 50 copies. And it comes in this slipcase that we have here on the left, which is similarly large. It's covered in moss green laid paper sides, and then the top, bottom and rear ends are covered in this brown cloth. The slipcase is so big, in fact, that it's a little bit unwieldy to get the book in and out of there, but I do prefer a slipcase to the portfolio that was used on some other large Whittington Press books because it provides slightly better protection for the book. And then the book proper has the same moss green paper sides, and it's quarter bound in this brown cloth. We have a wood engraving which is by Helmuth Weisenborn. On the spine is a brown leather label that reads simply Posters. We open the book out, again moss green laid paper for these end papers, and then we turn through to the book proper, and something we see right away, which is perhaps a little bit unusual, is that we have two different types of paper here, and those two papers have different sheet sizes. So we start with this antique paper that was recovered when the Oxford University Press was shutting down. And this is a wove paper that has this really beautiful antique golden colouring, deckled edges, and is quite heavy and feels very nice to handle. Another wood engraving by Helmuth Weisenborn there on the half title. And then we reach the title spread, which reads A Book of Posters Printed at Whittington. And here we see in use that Caslon swash face that I think the press is rightly so proud of, printed in two colours. Not a lot of textual content to this, that's not really the point of this book, but we do have a short introduction which talks about the role of posters in fine press printing and in the work of the Whittington Press in particular. It includes here this print of a poster from St Dominic's Press. I can only imagine it's a reprint, but there it is all the same. Then there's a list of the posters included. This B edition has 25 posters, and the colophon here is with the rest of the textual content at the beginning of the book. The main event, though, is the posters themselves, and they are tipped onto this paper, which is a very heavy Zircon mould-made paper. We can see it's much brighter and whiter than the antique paper from Oxford that was used for the textual material. And this heavy paper is needed because, as you'll see, we'll have some fairly substantial posters that are going to be mounted to this stuff. Throughout the book, the posters here are mounted on the recto page, and then on the facing verso page we have some textual content which describes a little bit the circumstance of the poster's production, gives some details of paper, typefaces and so on. And so here is the first poster. Like many of the posters, it's printed on a very nice paper. This is a handmade stock. And this is an example of a poster associated with an edition of The Garden of the Night, and it has this line illustration by Richard Kennedy, who did a lot of work for the press in its early days. Many of the posters, like this one, are folding, but one thing that's nice about the large size of this volume is that all of the posters are folded in a way that they open within the bounds of the book, and that's something I really appreciated a lot about this edition. Most of the posters in the book have been reprinted. Often they've been reprinted on the same paper that was used for the original, although occasionally there has been a different stock that was used, and when that's the case, it's duly noted. Not all of them are big showstopper examples. Some are much simpler pieces of advertising or ephemera. So there's a real mix, and it's quite interesting to see the various formats that Whittington's poster and broadside work has taken over the years. Here is another example of the work of Helmuth Weizenborn, this time several alphabets that he engraved. Here we have a poster for one of Whittington's many summer shows. Another example of some fun ephemera. I suspect that Whittington may be the only place in the world where you can see dry stone walling and typecasting being demonstrated in such close proximity. This one is printed on this fairly nice tactile Wookie whole paper. Here we have another nice example of Richard Kennedy's line work. This particular poster has also been hand-coloured. I should say that the variety of papers that are used for the posters is very rich. This one is extremely heavy, feels almost like a cardstock. Also, the textures of the papers are highly varied. This one is a much thinner paper, but still has this very nice tactile quality about it. So there's a real tactile delight to be had in leafing through the book, and it's a really nice way to sample different types of fine press papers while also enjoying the typographic and design work that goes into some of these posters. Here we have one that's printed on this Wookie whole paper, which is really very striking with this big lino cut, again by Helmuth Weizenborn. Again, this is a very dense and heavy paper. It feels like an egg carton almost. Here is one of my favorites. This has this image, which is by Howard Phipps, of the interior of the Whittington press itself. Again, on a very interesting paper stock here. And then we go straight into another favorite, perhaps my favorite of them all, in fact. So this one has this very large lino cut by Judith Verity, and it features this quote from Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Glory of the Garden, which was also published by the Whittington Press. Again, nice paper with this nice grey coloration. The lino cut here has been hand-coloured by Judith Verity. I think I'm right in saying that she hand-coloured these during one of the summer shows under the shade of a tree, and we can see that this poster has been signed by her and also hand-numbered. Here we have an example of Whittington's typesetting work, again using this Caslon swash face. This was a poster that was produced to be included with a miscellany of type, which I've reviewed on this channel a few months ago, so do check that out. Another example of a poster for a summer show. Some of the posters are much smaller and simpler than others. This one has a very nice example of Miriam McGregor's engraving work, showing a bird's eye view of the press itself. But quite remarkable to think that this was cut into wood by hand. Here we have an example of the immediately recognizable wood engraving work of Gwenda Morgan. Another summer show poster. Here we have a panoramic view of the Vale of Andoversford, and this is an image that was drawn from the dust jacket for Miriam McGregor's book about Whittington, also reviewed recently on this channel. So another nice example of her work. I believe this is from the Whittington's edition on the Fell Imperial Quarto. Here an example of the Poquar work from Peter Allen, another Whittington regular. More work by Helmuth Weizenborn. Here we have an impressive lino cut of Whittington Court made by Howard Phipps. So another really nice example of the poster work. And then how fitting that the last poster in the book is a poster, a broadside, advertising the very book that we're currently looking at, a book of posters printed at Whittington. those are the posters in the book. This is a visual delight, a tactile delight. It is now firmly anchored as a real favourite among my collection. It is the first of 2 books of posters that were published by the Whittington Press. I also have the second book. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in seeing a review of that book, which will be coming quite soon.